Today we are comparing and analyzing 4 different mixes of the same death metal song by my band Ripped to Shreds. I sent this mix out to 4 different well-known producers of heavy music. Kurt Ballou, of the band Converge, Colin Marston, of Krallis, Goreguts, and Behold the Arctopus, Taylor Young, X-Nails, Twitching Tongues, and God's Hate. And last we have Dan Lowndes of Cruciamentum, as well as Resonance Sound Studios. Let's take a look at the actual mixes. I've level matched them to the best of my ability. First up is Colin's. My first reaction when I heard this mix was that it was a very Colin Marston mix because of how dense and still natural it was. I didn't give him any specific album references to work off of, but to me it sounds a little bit like what he did for Labyrinth Constellation. This is Kurt Ballou's mix. I've idolized Kurt's productions for a really long time, and I'm a huge fan of Black Breath, Nails. When I first got the mix, I was like, holy shit, it's fucking Kurt Ballou, So I think it was a little hard for me to disengage emotionally from what he gave me and kind of try to examine it critically. So I think out of all the engineers, I gave him the least amount of notes. I think I told him to turn up the reverb a bit on the vocals. I think I can hear some of his signature drum samples in there, which I ended up purchasing and using on the new Ripped to Shreds record. This is Dan Lowndes' mix. I think I had the most back and forth with Dan about exactly what to do. And I think that kind of shows because a lot of the decisions that he ended up making were the sort of kind of decisions that I would normally make for my own mixes. This is Taylor Young's mix plus Brad's master. So, I mean, right off the rip, this is by far the most aggressive one. It's super fucking in your face. I like how crushed the snare sounds, especially. So let's kind of dive into more instrument-specific things. What I'm mostly listening for is the overall tone of the vocals, whether it's like very bright or kind of hollow, or there's a lot of bass or something. Here, I can hear the stereo delay a little bit subtle, but you can still hear a good amount of repeat. So Kurt must have done like a pretty big high shelf boost on the vocals. I'm still hearing stereo reverb or delay. Delay must only be on one repeat. So the reverb here, pretty dry. It's pretty neutral in tone. And Taylor's is like very upfront. Delay and reverb are like really wet. It ended up sounding the most similar to my own mix on the vocal aspect there. War metal style. Ooh, 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 ooh. I think Colin and Taylor had the coolest sounding one. Okay, let's take a look at what they did with the cymbals. Kurt has the crashes most bright out of everyone. Colin's cymbals crash sound dull and a little bit buried. Lounda's sounds pretty natural. And Taylor's is also pretty balanced. But I also want to hear what they do with hi-hat. I think Taylor and Colin sound like they might have muted the hi-hat mic altogether. And I think Dan's had the most hi-hat. Yeah, Colin's hi-hat is very subtle here. Let's have a look at the kick. There's very little click in Colin's kick. It sounds maybe almost all natural. And so there's like a balanced amount of click for Kurt, and I believe he told me that he did like a 50-50 blend of natural mic and trigger. Yeah, Lounda's kick, the clickiness sounds pretty reasonable. It's definitely the most subby out of all the kicks, and I believe he told me that he used the trigger for attack and the natural kick mic for most of the low end. And Taylor's kick is the most crushed and smashed and aggressive. Something that's super important for me, what does the blast beat sound like? When a drummer is playing blast beat with double kick, how consistent can he be between the right and the left foot? That's really what makes a blast beat sound powerful. Now, Brian's a really fucking good drummer, but he's not perfect. Left foot is still a little quieter. The most important use of triggers is to balance out the right and the left feet and make it sound totally consistent for a really brutal blast beat. So on both Colin and Kurt's, because they used a relatively less amount of trigger, you can definitely hear the kick going ba-ba, ba-ba. And it doesn't sound quite as brutal as Dan or Taylor, who used a lot of trigger. So you can hear the two kicks are very the same sound, ba 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 ba, over and over, and that's what makes a really good sounding blast beat to me. So there are people who say that they prefer 1 foot blasting for that reason, is the tonal consistency between every single hit. Like 99.9% of drummers aren't going to be able to go past like 200 BPM with 1 foot. And most of the stuff that I like listening to has ridiculously fast blast beats. Playing that 1 footed isn't realistic. Hey, let's talk about snare drums. Let's call in. Kurt. Loundes. Colin's snare sounds very dynamic, but it's not automated up during the thrash beats. And you can hear the snare start to get really loud on the thrash beat for Kurt. His sounds pretty compressed, and I think I hear one of his signature samples being blended in there. And then Loundes' snare sounds pretty natural. It sounds a bit compressed on the heart, but not like overly so. And obviously, Taylor's snare is like super crushed, super distorted. There's a little bit of reverb. It's not too much. So I also told him, on the slow parts, I want a shit ton of reverb. Kurt's sounds almost totally dry there. I don't think he put very much reverb on. So I can hear a fair bit of reverb. I hear a good tail on Taylor's snare. I feel like maybe on the blast beats, Loundes' drums sound the best. Overall, Kurt's drums have the most punch, but I also really like how Colin's drums are like very natural sounding. Colin is really good at enhancing the natural sound while still making sure that it sounds, like polished and aggressive and nasty. I fucking love guitar solos. Guitar solos need to sound good. So Colin's put a crazy amount of reverb and delay on that. So Kurt's is obviously much more dry. I could have done with a little bit more reverb, but I think can't complain. It sounds good. Yeah, Loundes sounds good. I just wish there was more stereo effects. Yeah, I like Taylor's a lot here. Solo sounds good. Let's have a look at like the overall guitar sound. There's a riff that I thought was really cool on this song. I'm a little bit biased about what are cool riffs. Colin guitar and bass sound together is probably the darkest out of all four, with the loudest bass guitar. Not as dark as Colin's, but it's pretty dark. The bass guitar in the center, you can kind of hear that grind. Of course, it's got amazing clarity. Loundes has the most presence in the guitar sound out of everyone. For the bass guitar, it's not very subby, but it's got really good clarity. I think the bass guitar for Taylor's, it must be pretty scooped. I'm hearing mostly like sub information. His guitar sound that he's chosen here is probably like the most neutral out of everyone's. Overall, out of all four, Colin's mix has the best vibe and best creative use of effects. Just matched what I was looking for from the very start. Required the least amount of tinkering to get it to sound exactly the way I wanted. For Kurt, I mean, Kurt's mix is probably the best from a technical point of view. The tone of Lowndes' guitars I vibe with the most, but that's maybe because I think it sounds the most like my own mix. With some more tweaking on the sound design and the effects, like especially the stereo reverbs and delays, it'd be really easy to get to a place that I'm like 11 out of 10 happy with. But Taylor's mix is obviously like super duper aggressive, and you can still hear everything with a ton of clarity. The only thing is, I'm not sure that it would really be the vibe I would want to go with for the whole album. But of course, I mean, I wanted different perspectives on what I could make Rip to Shreds sound like. You know, I could easily work with any of these guys over, you know, a couple more revisions to get it to sound exactly the way. Even though there's like obvious differences between all the mixes, it's not huge night and day thing that I thought it might end up being. That's because the most important part is still the recording and producing part. It would be very different if, you know, I gone with a band, traveled to God City Studios to record, or traveled to the Pit, or Metagross, because then the engineers would have been involved from step one. But, you know, we produce and record all the records here. I'm still going to be like the biggest influence on how the end product's going to sound. But doing all this, you know, it let me understand what I kind of need to focus on for recording Sunshi. You know, I learned that, you know, it's totally okay to use snare sample, that I can record a full death metal album in here, have it be mostly natural kick drum. Let me know what you guys think. Maybe you think my mix sounded like total garbage. Maybe you guys think I should have scrapped the album and had Kurt mix the whole thing instead. Comment down below. And check out our new record, Sunshi, out on Relapse. And we'll be coming to see you soon on tour.